Tor posting? Minotaur shit posting. I don't know. Anyway, we're live.
Yeah.
Hi.
We are.
Ladies and gentlemen, and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. We're also going to give you links on where to find all the best shit posting. My name's Rotten Deadite. Today we're talking about Bosmer. Goody goody.
Yay.
Cannibal elves. My favorite subject. With me today are...
I am Andrew, also known as the White Guar.
I am James, also known as Aramithius.
I'm Jonathan, also known as Sothis, and this is also my favorite subject.
Except you're serious.
Oh, he was not serious?
Oh, I don't know.
All right.
LJ,
Anyway.
LJ, who are you?
LJ, say hello.
LJ.
I'm LJ. I do things.
That's Icefire Warden, who apparently forgot he's Icefire Warden.
Or Al Hator, however you want to.
Alphator, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Many names.
Do they really eat the people they kill? Thank you, Flying Eel. They're obligated, I believe.
Getting on topic here. Bosmer.
My man Flying Eel saying, get to the fucking point. You're in the wrong cast.
I'll answer the question. Sometimes, as long as it's another Bosmer.
So, as long as it's another... Ooh, I didn't know that. Okay, so let's start off with the basics about the Bosmer. They're elves. They differ from the Altmer.
Yes.
In the respect that they follow something called the Green Path.
Pact.
Green Pact. I know a lot about what I'm talking about. I'm an expert. But why do they, well, first off, why do they differ, one might say biologically, but I would wink biologically, from Altmer? When did the difference happen?
Well, we've got different accounts there, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of curious because both of them seem to come from the Bosmer, if I remember correctly. You've got the Ooze, which is that they were still unstable in their shape sometime after creation, and it was the pact with Ifri that allowed them to have their stable shape and maintain the stable shape. But you've also got some tales from them which say they were stable at the time of Somerset, I think, when there were still multiple different groups of what would become different groups of elves on Somerset, and they then decided to leave because the Altmer were too stuffy and they wanted to get back to nature and stuff.
So I think I won't go into my rant on this, but I think that anything that says that other Mer were in Somerset with the exception of the Chimer is Altmer propaganda bullshit.
Okay.
Sure.
So
yeah.
But we still need to know where they came from. Why?
Yeah.
We have, for Khajiit, for example, we have an example in their mythology of what created the Khajiit, where they're, what created them. And we have in Chimer or Dunmer mythology an explanation for why they're different. But we don't necessarily have an explanation for why the Bosmer deviated from the Altmer, Aldmeris, basically.
we do, but it mostly comes from the Khajiit.
Oh?
Yes.
Go on.
It is the Khajiit and the Bosmer were once the forest people, which I personally believe is just the Elno-Fae who lived in the woods in southern Tamriel.
That sounds good.
And then Azura made the Khajiit all kitty-like so they could survive the harshness that Nirn was. And then Ifre went, oh shit, I can do that cool thing too. Look at me go. And then made the Bosmer. So the idea is Ifre is... So they still follow Ariel. They still see him as like the father of the divines, but really Ifre is their go-to dude. For the most part, they revere him more, or her. Also
them.
Them. At this point in time, it's them, which we can get to later as well. They're now Earthbones. Oh
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I forgot about. I remember hearing about that in ESO. I think about how Ifr is now apparently it's been suggested that Ifr or Ifre is the Earthbones.
Yes, the Earthbones. So in somewhere in Glenumbra, there's a quest where you're trying to free some Earthbones, and one of them says, "We were the Ifre."
Right.
Okay.
Then we were the Elno-Fae, and now we're the Earthbones. Along those lines. So I don't think... And actually, there is a Bosmer in Eldenroot who's like to the left of the furniture people. She's a spinner, and she talks a whole bunch about Ifre, and she actually confirms that. So the Bosmer even think that Y'ffre is the Earthbones.
Interesting.
Okay.
The really different, like something you really don't get very often in Elder Scrolls lore, which is a unified deity of some kind.
Yeah.
Well, it's more that like, other people don't really talk about them. There's the Bosmer and the Khajiit are the only two cultures that really mention Y'ffre at all.
The Altmer mentioned Joffrey, and the Bretons do too.
Oh, okay. Different names.
Yeah, different names.
Joffrey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think Joffrey. I don't think they don't assign it the Earthbones role, do they?
No.
No, he's more of a like the nature god.
Yeah.
Which in a way you can kind of stretch that to mean.
Yeah, I think you probably could.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I know my
I
background's
seem to
offline, Captain. I'm not trying to fuck with that today.
Just to vaguely deviate a little. I'm kind more than we do anyway.
Yeah, I'm like, why
I'm
stop?
Yeah, they talk about Y'ffre as the spirit of the now. I think is a quote from Varieties of Faith in his description. Do we get any more information about what that means anywhere?
Nothing like direct, but I would translate that into him being the Earthbones personally, because so the now is very much like post convention, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what they meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what they meant. So prior to so the whole little bit of creation myth we have. So prior to convention, Nirn was of course not stable and morphy goobly gook.
Wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff.
Yeah, don't expect me to brain too hard.
Well, that sucks because you're literally carrying this cast.
Great. So I think personally, all of that just kind of happened on or around convention. So the stabilization of Nirn, the stabilization of the Bosmer, I kind of think it all personally, I think all kind of coalesced at the same quote unquote time.
Right. And
but there's also that weird bit of Aldmer still existing post convention,
right?
Kind of fucks with that too.
Yeah, that was kind of my understanding of it. That the Bosmer Khajiit forest proto Khajiit forest people, if that was the thing, happened a while after convention. That there was this kind of little pocket where stuff wasn't really happening or wasn't really coalescing properly after convention. It feels like it's some time after everything else has stabilized.
Yeah, I get that, but that still like contradicts everything.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily bad, but
no, not.
The existence of the Bosmer kind of do that, as that sort of a thing, do that in my opinion anyway, because
they super do.
Because they don't really fit into. They almost don't fit into the two categories of Elnathe in that case, unless they were some wanderers who wandered so far that they forgot what they were.
So
because I kind of get that impression from the Khajiit as well, is that there's sort of like like if Men and Mare are the wandering Elnathe and the regular Elnathe, then like Khajiit and Bosmer are kind of like hella wandering Elnathe, like real wandering, you know.
So I have a theory on this, Andrew. I talked about it with Andrew quite a bit. So. Also, I couldn't find this. Does anyone know where it actually says, or where anyone said that the Elnathe wear their ideology is skin?
Well,
because that's
that
thing,
first
right?
happens
Say that
in
again?
War Manifest Metaphors, doesn't it? That's where I first see that.
Where their ideology is.
Now, carry on.
Skin, did you say?
Yeah, they wear their ideology as skin. So like their beliefs, because belief shapes reality, so their beliefs shape themselves, right?
Belief does not necessarily shape reality in the Elder Scrolls universe. This is actually a conversation I had with a bunch of people on Reddit at one point, and actually in the Memospore IRC, that Kirkbride was a part of, and he was very insistent that we not think of it that way, that reality can be shaped by belief, but rather by perception. And the difference is that you have some authoritarian control over belief. You can change your belief, but your perception, unless you're extremely mentally powerful, is shaped irrespective of what your beliefs are. Your perspective is how you were born, the history and personality that you have, your fears of repeating the past, your fears of what will happen in the future. It's all these things that you can't really control unless you have astronomical, willpower. In other words, chim. But perspective is also a factor of culture, which is, I think, what that line was about how the Elnathe wear their ideologies on their skin. I think it's a reflection of, or it's a repetition of the idea that originated in like early Morrowind development, which was that your character's appearance is determined by their race, but their abilities, their stats, and racial powers, what you would call, all that stuff are were supposed to be determined by their culture. In other words, where they grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. That's...
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I might be wrong about this, but I think there was actually a thing where you weren't selecting race at all; you were selecting culture. Like that's what it was called, and so race didn't enter into it at all. I'm not as sure about that, but I think the point was that the point that I'm trying to make is that there has been sort of an effort in Elder Scrolls lore development to try to suggest the idea that culture determines perspective and belief systems and ability and perception more or entirely in respect to aside from just race or or whatever. So it doesn't matter so much that you're Khajiit or Redguard or Bosmer or Imperial or whatever. All that matters is what your perspective is, what your what your perception is.
Yeah, I found the quote for ideologies and skin, by the way. It was in Kirkbride's Reddit AMA. Question was, what caused the Wanderers and the old Elnathe to split? What was the cause of their war? Response was, that was the dawn. Wars then were ideologies given skin. So it's kind of it's the idea of kind of wearing your side's colors, quite literally.
So okay, there it is. Yep, I found it. Okay, so I kind of have this idea that there's not necessarily genetics, because that doesn't really make sense, but instead when babies are made, the baby juice transfers sort of like
when mommy and daddy love each other very much. Then a special hug.
Thanks.
Right. So I had peanut gallery. Don't mind me.
So I'll shorten it. So if water is memory, then they're just transferring memory to create a new being out of memory that has the same types of memories that they already have, which is what creates the race. So the memory of their race. And like side note, maybe the mother is the main race because she has most of the watery bits.
The womb.
The womb is the water that you're immersed in.
Exactly.
Yes, except that the feminine force in Elder Scrolls mythology is generally the earth, and the male is the water.
Okay.
So
Or the milk.
Rain falls on the crops and creates life, is the idea.
True.
So if semen is memory, then what does that make Riemann? Oh, God.
What does that make what?
Okay, so Bosmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Magical semen. This is the deep lore we're here for. Yep, that's right. That's how we bring it.
Idea here. I mean, that's just kind of something that always has to come up in every podcast.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's all talk about Riemann.
Just wieners all the time.
It doesn't matter what your podcast is about.
If it can be interpreted as a dick joke.
There's a logarithm you can follow that determines when wieners will become the subject of your podcast.
What is it? Kirkbride said, if it can be interpreted as a penis, it should will be interpreted as a penis.
Yeah.
Oh, does anybody remember the Trans Cyrodiil Insurgency script?
Yeah.
Vaguely.
Yeah, the Remanok.
Yeah.
It's a floating cloud of homunculi. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see where that one's going.
Mm-hmm. Fires dagger missiles.
Yeah. Okay. And one question. If just going back to Bosmer.
Yeah. No, I was trying. Then penis.
Yeah. If the Bosmer were so relatively unsettled and behind everything, or behind the other races in how they were getting established, the first era is set by the foundation of the Camoran dynasty in Valenwood.
Yeah.
Which feels a little strange to me. They kind of did they have some sort of accelerated development towards hierarchy? That doesn't really feel right, even as I'm trying to process it, because they're anarchic. They're portrayed as lazy by everyone else, because they work on their terms and not otherwise, as far as I can tell. And that's the way they learn all. Sorry, LJ?
Well, that actually reminds me of because I was trying to tell Jonathan earlier that about the spirit of now thing with Y'ffre is actually brought up in racial motives, and it's like a dialogue that you can come across, and basically they describe the Bosmer and the Argonians as living in the orbital now, and basically they live in the moment, and they define their moments throughout time and space. So to me, that seems like basically it's actually kind of poetic that the Bosmer defined the first moment of history.
That's
by
literally
neat. Not even trying to do it. They just did something, and it was like, yeah, we got a king now. And it was like, okay, that's history.
Yep.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then it kind of carried on, which is another kind of link that I want to make to the Argonians. I'll go into a bit more detail when we actually do the Argonians. But there's the idea of they have culture and hierarchy when they need it. Is that more or less what you're saying? It's kind of
that's
kind of like
yeah.
So there's the component bits floating around that will form as and when.
It's also kind of weird. Like they have this dynasty that's almost meaningless because every village is ran by a tree thane, and then they all mostly listen to spinners, and each spinner has its own different interpretation of the Green Pact that could be completely different as some other guy. You might be like, I ate this fallen leaf as a salad, and one spinner might be like, high five, bro, get your greens, and the other one's gonna be like, I'm now killing you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, does it differ that much from... Is it sort of like a more fractionated version of, say, like Nordic culture, where everything's broken up into tribes almost?
Yeah, very much so. It's very tribal based, which is kind of weird that there is even a king, because like the king, because even in literally every book that talks about the leaders of the Bosmer, it talks about the Sylvanar and Green Lady.
Yeah.
Like they very rarely mention the Camoran dynasty. They're like, yep, they're there. Hi.
Oh yeah, we got one of those. Yeah, kings. Yeah, we got that handled. Thank you. We've already got one. I've seen him. He's very nice.
Is that just me, or is that just kind of a symptom of how the developers have thought about it, though? Because it becomes a bit more explicit in Morrowind, where the Empire literally came along and said, "Here, have a token king," and then the Dunmer carry on literally the same as before. It just feels like exactly the same thing.
You guys got a king? No. Oh, you gotta have a king. King's great.
Everyone's
need to have
doing
one.
it.
Okay. Bill, you want to be king? All right.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing. Just for it to crop up and be that tangential more than once makes me think: is it a design decision or just a design habit or something? With how they're thinking about.
Hi, Reg. Hello.
Huh?
Saying hi to Reg
Guys,
in the chat.
Spirit.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm not looking
Oh.
at the chat. It lags out my computer for some reason.
Yeah.
Makes me-
Oh, the chat's where the good stuff happens. That's why I've got it up on the screen for the streams, because that's where the good stuff is. We just talk shit.
Yep.
We don't. We're
Okay,
entirely
so-
useless.
The deepest lore.
Okay. So thinking about the Sylvanar, I was vaguely thinking today, kind of Sylvanar Green Lady stuff that that's got this well, it depends on how much you want to take a dance in fire literally. The notion of the Sylvanar being the personification of the Bosmer people.
Everything else agrees with that. Carry on.
Okay. Yeah. Then I was trying to see whether there was a connection between that sort of thing and the perchance acorn, the Borsbury Tower. Do we see any kind of a link there if towers are personifications of racial identities in some way?
Are we gonna talk about the tower now? I'm so excited. Okay.
Yeah, let's
Well-
talk about the tower.
Yes. Go. That was kind of my thought. I was trying to find a way to link
Hmm.
the perchance acorn and the Sylvanar, and I couldn't
Short answer,
really.
yes.
Okay.
Everything about the Bosmer is like you start, you have a start and you have a destination, but the path to get there doesn't fucking matter. Do whatever you want to get there. It's you see it in the Spinner story, where when they tell a story, it literally happens, by the way. Cough, cough, dawn magic.
Mhm.
So it literally happens. You see that in the quest line. Oh my god, what's his
Okay.
name? The Hound. That's his name, right? Isn't that what he was called?
The Sylvanar.
No, the Hound. The
It's the
dude
Hound.
who worshipped Hircine, the Hircine guy.
Yeah, it's the Hound.
Yeah.
Yeah, see? So in the Hound quest line, he gets a spinner to retell the story of the Sylvanar and writes out the Sylvanar. So the Hound can make whoopee with the Green Lady. So yeah, they don't really care about the path. Well, they care about it, but like it's malleable. That's the door's equivocal. You know, everything is maybe. So their magic is centered around maybe and perchance, and that was the like stark difference between the Aliens and them when the Aliens arrived and tried to F over their tower. Was their power was all about will, which just literally didn't work. Like the Green-Sap was just like, I don't get it, and so it just didn't happen. Like no one really stopped him. It just didn't work.
Okay. So
Carry
Yeah.
on. Go. I'm kind of
Yeah.
babbling and rambling and shit.
Yeah, we
No,
were
no,
starting
it's
to talk
just
about towers, and then you went right off the rails, man.
yeah. No, it's good because well that the Aelids is another point I'm going to bring up later because we need to have some vague core structure, and I have one kind of coalescing in my head. But if it's the kind of the way if it's the destination that's the important thing, is that going to be that the perchance acorn and I don't know if I can't even remember the name of the tower in Valenwood apart from
Green-Sap.
But it's Green-Sap,
Yeah, Green-Sap.
but I don't know whether it's got another name.
Yeah, what do they call it? I know what
They call it
Yeah.
Green-Sap.
they do. Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, now, what is that literally? I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but it could be either Falanesti, it could be
It's not Fallen SD. So
Right.
Yes.
the Elden Root, or not Elden Root, in the Arbic Enigma, it
Yep.
says every grot, or the grot is every grot. So their tower is literally the entire green.
that's
Okay.
that's
So
what I thought.
So it's not just Fallen SD, it's also Elden Root. And Elden Root is actually the first tree. So every grot is the tower, but I've always found it kind of weird they call it Green-Sap.
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
nothing to do with like the tree bits. It's the water bits.
Sounds a little histy.
Sounds a little like memory manipulation-y to me.
Say that sounds
Yeah.
very fucking kiss right there.
Mhm.
Yeah. It is a little histy. It's a little I've got this idea that like they're more in touch with memory.
Oh, Sems is suggesting that it might be like an aspen grove where there's sap literally flowing between them.
Well, there's actually
Yes.
Mhm.
Like in their roots. I super
Yeah.
agree with that. Yeah.
Hey Jonathan, have you read something? There's a comment by MK where he talks about the different ideologies of centering around trees with the Bosmer and the Argonians. He says that they probably would have warned about this in the past about with that shit.
Oh.
Yeah, I fully believe that the Hist are memory parasites.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
Oh.
I can see that. Yes.
I dig that.
All rivers lead to the Black Marsh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All water sinks
I'm
down.
feeling about the fact that his are basically USB drives that pretty much leash off the entire fucking universe.
They're a so you're saying they're a memory leak.
Pretty much. They literally just absorb everything.
They're doing what Homomora wants to do, but better. But,
Ah.
Right.
Fuck more. This did it first.
If you think about it, tentacles kind of look like roots, don't they?
More like dragon tails. Ooh.
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
oh, yeah.
Wink,
We had this
wink.
conversation about 2 days ago.
Well, so okay, so are they memory parasites or are they, I don't know how to put this other than memory bottom feeders? Are they like catfish?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, I could go with that.
Yeah.
So like if all rivers lead to Black Marsh, then all memory flows through into Black Marsh, and then you end up, I guess you know
Suck up the remainder.
yeah. It's like the life that spawns at the base of at the end of a river, you know, where all the
Well,
silt and everything has come all the way down, and you've got the delta at the end. I'm thinking about southern Louisiana at this point. And literally everything down there that's living off the water is what I would refer to as good eating.
Mhm.
We both.
Just
Yeah.
But what's interesting is both the Bosmer and the Argonians are called the tree sap people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
I mean, maybe there's less of a separation between the Argonians and the Bosmer than we think. They're much more closely, you know. I always kind of wrote that off as you know, lack of words to use, but I mean that could be indicative of something a little more I don't know, important in the grand scheme of things.
Well,
but as usual, I'm sorry, as usual, Buckney has blown my fucking mind. Hist roots through Sithis cracks.
Ooh.
Mhm. Yeah, I could see that.
Oh man.
But yeah, it's kind of as you're saying, the kind of the links between Argonians and Bosmer Sap now that we're saying this now seem an awful lot more clear, and then you have the Aelids coming along and imposing or doing some stuff, not really doing a lot, and then potentially dying out. I didn't think that.
Well, like the aliens to try to do that same shit in Black Marsh, and it did not work out at all. You can't contain Black Marsh.
Yeah, that is true.
Okay.
They tried super hard and it did not work.
Didn't work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Until it came close to the Riemann, and he literally burned the whole fucking thing to the ground.
Well, it was scorched earth at that point. You know, it's like trying to root them out of their little holes and stuff. You just have to cover the whole place in Agent Orange.
And that still didn't work. It turned into a fucking bomb.
Yeah, and it still didn't damn work. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do we have any kind of concrete examples of any alien influence within Valenwood? Obviously, that you had the exiles from the rebellion, kind of coming in and being welcomed, which is another thing that the Bosmer do really well. They assimilate people, or they welcome people much more than any other culture does.
They're super friendly.
Yeah.
Until you get down to like Brackenleaf.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of you
Yeah,
go in
Brackenleaf was really kind of, you ain't from around here, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're friendly so long as you follow the Green Pact, although the Green Pact is kind of dying at this point. Although that seemed to be the portrayal pretty much throughout the eras, that even in ESO, when it's kind of the Green Pact is still around, but it's not the defining feature of the race anymore.
Well, I sort of felt like in ESO that it felt like I felt like it was sort of oscillating. Like the Green Pact becomes really important, and then and like at the peak of the arc of the wave, it's very important and everybody follows it and it's very strict. And then as it starts to decline, it's not necessarily not being practiced, but it's being loosened up a little bit, And people start and the Bosmer start saying things like, well, I mean, you can, look, a dude's got to get his fibers from somewhere. So, like we're somewhat fond of pooping. So we're going to, we're going to say, well, if it falls off a tree, you can eat it, or something. Yeah. And then at the bottom of where the Green Pact is dying out, people are saying, well, I mean, maybe there's a few plants that are okay for you to eat. And at that point, there's always like the hardliners go, what the fuck is going on here? And then it starts to go back up again until you get all the way back up at the top where everybody's hardcore and, and so on. And it just oscillates back and forth. That's the impression that I got in ESO, was that it was either on the incline or the decline. It was in a transitory phase. And
it's almost like the Bosmer ideology is a whole bunch of maybe, perchance.
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to. Yeah, I was kind of winking at that.
Exactly what you're getting at. Also, there was the Green Lady interview that Schick did.
Oh, I didn't read that.
The Lore Master's Corner.
I remember that. Got one of my questions answered in that.
Oh yeah, nice. So one of them was with the Green Lady, and when asked about the Green Pact, she talked about how like everyone does it differently, and then some people will even change how they. Literally what you just said, actually.
Schick needs to start doing those again. Those are so great.
The Green Lady said that. Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Do we have any examples of Bosmer not following the Green Pact and then becoming formless goo? Because that's kind of the threat.
Yes.
Okay, and is that a social thing, or is that just or is that metaphysical that you break the Green Pact? Okay.
Literal metaphysical. So we have a couple of examples of Green Pact breakers. There's one quest where some guys break the Green Pact. They're put in prison, and then they end up becoming banished. And then when you're actually at the Ooze, you have all the documentation about the Ooze there, and you can talk to some of the ghosts and how they decided not to follow Y'ffre and got punished for it. That's actually another really interesting thing. The Bosmer are like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're like the only race that actually has a version of their like hell.
Yeah.
I can't think of anyone else who has some sort of like afterlife punishment.
Unless the Nords think of like Aldmeris as hell.
Well, they do think of not going to Sovngarde as hell, but they don't really define what not going to Sovngarde is.
Yeah.
Right.
You also have the Khajiit. They have the darkness behind the moons.
Oh, yes. If you're a bad Khajiit, you go and
I guess that's true.
become something else. Yeah.
Okay, but that's also interesting. Being the forest people are the only ones with a hell-related thing. Also, the Dromotha are related to Lorcaj.
Yes.
And I'm trying to spin this some way. The Ooze is of Nirn. I don't know. I can't brain enough to get that going.
I feel like you're heading somewhere with that, but you can't quite get a hold of it. Yeah.
You want me to do it for you?
Yeah, go LJ. I'm too hungover for this.
All right. So in the mirror is the darkness inside Lorcan's heart, right?
Yep.
And
Right.
she's the major princess. And she's literally the embodiment of entropy and decay.
Mm-hmm.
What's Ooze
Oh.
better than Put? It's literally a decaying force.
Yeah.
That's true. I like it.
Yeah. Although if the Bosmer were going to go after any Daedra, I'd kind of expect it to be Hircine. What with the whole hunting and wilderness, and they do I'm remembering that same interview, with the lady, and they do say that there is a danger that Hircine will rear its head if the hunter does the wrong things or takes or does something more than just asking for a blessing while hunting, that sort of thing.
That's. I'm glad you brought that. Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
But yeah, it just feels like Hircine should have some more influence on it, on the culture, or at least have some form of analog. Aha. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much, Andrew. He's just pasted it in our chat.
Taken too far.
Yeah,
the
can
cult
you
of
read that
Hircine
out because it's
conserve.
kind of behind
Yeah.
chat?
Go
the,
read it.
the indication of Hircine the hunter can be benign and harmless, as when an archer asks him for luck when drawing a bead on a stag. Taken too far, however, the cult of Hircine can serve as a justification for cruelty and a rationalization for oppression and murder. We saw an example of this in our own recent history, leading up to my hand fasting to the Sylvanar. The Daedra exist, and when they intrude upon mortal affairs, sometimes we must deal with them. But doing so is always, and that's when the quote runs out. So it's the idea of that they'll be ever present. It's kind of they'll be part of it, but they shouldn't be too big a part of it.
So
Yes.
I'm
So
trying
maybe-
to find the book, but I can't find it. There is actually a Hircine Bosmeri cult who venerates Hircine and basically calls Ifre the devil.
Right.
And they basically bitch about Ifre's tyranny of form. So that's the whole concept of Ifre, is that he gave the Bosmer form. I don't know if we've actually talked about that at all.
Oh no, we haven't actually, and that's a very important point. Is that the Bosmers, that the implication of the Bosmers' creation myth is that they are naturally so chaotic in form that they, I mean, I don't think it's a matter of like each Bosmer turns into something animalistic or weird. It's that they're constantly transforming, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's sort of like, when your, greater daemon of Khorne turns into a chaos spawn.
Yeah. Very much chaos spawn like.
Yeah. And now you're rolling a d6 for all your fucking stats and hating it. Yeah.
You accidentally roll snake eyes and cry a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blood for the blood god, skulls for the blood. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of something that I found interesting on a thematic level. If just thinking about the forest and so on in general, it feels like the way the Bosmer are linked to lacking in form, and to an extent it's the same with werewolves, because werewolves are quite often creatures of the forest and such. The idea of the forest as a place where there's an awful lot of change happening, and that sort of thing, and change being bad. It's something that the Bosmer kind of pick up on to a degree, but I don't know whether they've really run with it.
I don't think that the Bosmer would go so far as to start calling change bad, but they definitely seem to be a middle road kind of race where they say, look, change is bad if there's too much. Yeah. And what they were looking at with with their previous situation was that it was closer to pure patamaic. It was that we can't get anything done because we're always changing our minds. We're all fucking ADD and we need medication.
Sounds very natural right there.
Say again?
Sounds very natural, orderly right there. Wink.
Yeah, a little bit. But I mean, order seems to be almost too much of a word for the Bosmer,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very much in the middle
for
of
all
the road.
kind of talk of venerating nature and so on, Darwinism doesn't really seem to register either.
Yeah.
There's not the notion of kill or be killed, survival of the fittest at all.
Herbert Spencer.
No, it's quite the opposite, actually. With Bosmer, they're very generous. They're very caring. Even when tribes like war with each other, they don't kill each other. They'll like play tricks. They'll play tricks and like, hey, I just stole your necklace. Come back and get it, bitch. And then if anyone ever like accidentally dies, like the skirmish is done.
Everybody goes, whoa, too serious.
Dude. And then the two tribes go to town on eating the fallen Bosmer, and they're like, "Our bad, guys, our bad."
Let's have lunch.
Yeah, so kind of like a frat party with a make-up barbecue.
Yeah, very much like that.
Well, that's that. You know, the Red Pact is where Hircine offered the Bosmer to only eat plants. No, the idea is that I think part of that was due to so when we're talking about the Bosmer and Bosmer culture, we also have to keep in mind I find it helpful to keep in mind the perspective of some of the writers at Bethesda and ZeniMax and other places, where the Bosmer were originally based on Dungeons and Dragons Wood Elves, and the fantasy trope for Wood Elves is, I should say before Tolkien got his hands on them, were slight or small little guys who play pranks on people, but have a sinister and dark side to them. Wow, that's a hell of a username, Paravania. Wow, thanks for the follow, by the way. Oh, and also, while I'm talking about Moharam, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the House of We, both of you. So there was a tendency for developers and writers to kind of, I don't know if they were able to divorce themselves from the idea, or if they were unable or unwilling to divorce themselves from that forest pixie kind of thing. And so the idea of Bosmer fighting a war of pranks and silliness, or I should say very serious silliness, sort of reminds me of that kind of perspective. And I know for a fact that there are a number of developers who like to roll their eyes at stuff like that.
Yeah. What wasn't there like, oh, these guys are lame, let's make them eat each other kind of joke that just became reality? I heard something about that, like Coleman or Kirkbride had done.
It was the idea that the Bosmer were worshipping plants or trees.
Yeah.
And that they were guardians of the forest and so on. And they were talking about, they were just sort of shooting the shit about, well, if they care so much about trees, why do they eat them? What if they just eat nothing but meat? And then that came from, and then it was a natural evolution to, well, maybe they eat each other. And maybe they're cannibals, you know? And so that at that point, that's where that came from. And also this was also during the time when Kirkbride and Kuhlman were trying very hard to differentiate the Elder Scrolls setting from the typical fantasy trope.
Right.
So so they were trying everything they could. That was where the Psijic Order came from, because they were worried somebody at Bethesda was going to come up with psychic powers. And they were like, let's just grab that name and make it something else. And so that's where that came from. That's why the Psijic Order is called the Psijic Order originally, is because they're trying really hard not to let people do psychic powers, which they have in D&D, which is...
I seem to recall Kirkbride saying something about how much he hates the Wood Elves on principle.
Yeah.
And that's why he made them eat each other, because
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
So much.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, nah, I'm just gonna troll you with this.
Yeah.
They eat each other now because they suck.
And he inadvertently led them to become awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's what you got to do. Well, I mean, the origin for the famous but unfortunately never seen image of Orsimer caterpillar mounts was from the same thing. They were just trying really hard to make orcs not orcs, you know. And Kirkbride has a similar eye roll attitude towards Orsimer in general. They're a D&D trope, and he's just tired of them. Orcs, they used to be elves. Well, yeah, I mean that's Tolkien right there, you know.
Yep. And pig titties.
Yeah.
Pig titties.
Pig titties. So yeah, and we'll get to Orsimer, provided we fucking remember to.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it was me too, man.
They're the pariah folk even in real life.
Yeah.
Okay, question that from Yes I Love Nachos, which kind of struck something that I was kind of asking about earlier. Thinking about the spinners, can they rewrite someone's nimic? E.g., can a Nord become a Bosmer?
It's interesting you should bring that up because we're talking about the race that brought us the Camoran dynasty.
What?
Yes.
And
yes.
oh wait, I think I heard Mojo just get a boner in chat.
something I spit fire and am gold now.
Yeah. Which means we get the Camoran dynasty and therefore Mankar Camoran, who rewrote himself to be from a Bosmer to an Altmer.
But he did that unaided though. He wasn't part of the spinner culture.
It's unclear whether that was the Razor that did that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of been the common thought is, oh, well, mimic surgery, he did all this stuff with that. Like, he doesn't need anything else because here it is.
Right.
But, I mean...
But the idea here is that, as I Love Nachos brought up, is the idea that maybe Camoran got the knowledge that he used to to leverage the Razor from the culture of spinners.
I dig it. So I would say definitely they can.
Well, I would agree. And that was kind of like, until Nachos brought that up, that was one of the biggest plot holes that I had with Mankar Camoran, was the idea that he rewrote his own Nimic using the Razor. My first question was, where the fuck did he learn how to do that? Like, that's crazy. How did he learn how to do that? Because I've never heard of anybody doing that. And
or he didn't have to try so hard because he's a Bosmer, because they're inherently mutable anyway.
Yeah, that could work too.
Holy shit, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
so it was a perfect chance. Yeah, nobody could have done it except a Bosmer.
Yeah, my other thought related to spinners and rewriting stuff was quite what's happened in terms of their history and their origin stories and how they interact with the Ooze. Is the severity of whether they react, whether they break the Green Pact, and so on, related to the strength of those particular stories that the spinners tell, and if a spinner punishes you for breaking the Green Pact, you're going to wind up as the Ooze. Whereas if the spinner around you is lax and isn't that fussed, then you can get away with it.
I think that's probably
so they wield. Sorry.
I was just saying, I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
that sounds pretty good.
The two guys who broke the pact just went to jail and got banished because they even, if I remember right, I might be totally full of shit right now, but I vaguely remember them talking about how if they had a more strict spinner, they would have been executed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I also
remember...
kind of thought was is the idea of this.
Go
on, Andrew.
I remember seeing it was somewhere else. It wasn't in. I don't think it was in the AD section of ESO at all. But I recall encountering a wood elf, and you talk to her, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't follow the Green Pact. I even had a salad today."
Ooh.
And it's this big shocking thing.
Yeah, that was in Ebonheart.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think that the Green Pact is something that everyone must inherently follow. I think that's a decision they make, a relationship that they choose to have with Ifray.
Or it only works within Valenwood.
You know, it's like accept Christ into your heart, true. But you know.
So they are super okay with well, not they, but most Bosmer and most spinners are okay with utilizing plant material from outside of the green.
Yeah.
We see it in a Dance of Fire.
Well, it's also talked about in the PGE3, I think. It talks about how they'll import wood from other places for buildings and tools and stuff.
Yeah.
But they don't use stuff from Valen wood. Like that's off limits.
So the question the question there then is what's Aoifre's relation to the green? What's so special about the trees of Valenwood that Aoifre is connected to them?
I know.
Tell us.
It's the ooze.
Oh, so you're saying the sap of the trees?
The sap of the trees. So
Yeah.
so I think we kind of skipped over this a bit. I think that the Green-Sap, the tower, where it always talks about how it's every grot, and someone mentioned how the sap gets. Someone in comments mentioned how the sap gets like traded between the trees. I
Like an aspen grove.
Yeah, I totally think that's true. I think the tower is actually the sap, personally. Not the trees itself, and the trees are just the vessel that carry it.
Which that's
to sue for copyright infringement.
What?
So the Hiss went to sue for copyright infringement.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably why they don't super get along.
Unless the sap and so on is a rogue hist, but that's getting into proper tinfoil hat territory.
That is all the way tinfoil hatty.
I don't like that personally.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. But yeah, it was just kind of the similarities we brought up earlier, and the idea if the sap and the water of Valenwood is a thing, is the thing that's making the tower and is making the stone, then you've potentially got that, and then you've potentially got that connection with the Hist, although that means that Hist build towers, which feels a bit strange.
Oh, I think it feels appropriate. I like that idea. Yeah.
But yeah.
So
and it's also kind of interesting because you've got a natural tower, which isn't built by Myr in imitation of Aldmeris. If we take the idea of the Bosmer leaving the old Myr as how they happened, just for half a second, then we can think of Green-Sap as a tower erected in opposition to Old Meris, in opposition to the other Merish towers. Almost, it's I don't know whether it will be in opposition to Adamantia as such, but it's a different kind of ideology that's driving that seems to be driving that sort of a tower.
Actually, I would say that Green-Sap is the most like Oddmares, because the thing with Oddmares is that it doesn't really exist. It's basically it's literally boiling in time.
It's an ideal at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So I agree with LJ here. So you asked why is the Green-Sap so important, or why is the green so important? Sorry, I say the ooze. So what is the ooze? The ooze is the primordial goop that is left over from the Dawn era. It is the one thing that remains on Tamriel that is still unstable. I think it's also important. I'll get to my final thought here in a second. I think it's also important to note that the one creation myth that exists that we actually witness events that take place outside of the dream and before the dream is the Bosmer creation myth. The Anuad was originally posted in Bethesda forums labeled the Bosmer creation myth.
Oh, that's true.
Yes. Although I would almost argue that wasn't necessarily Bosmer as Bosmer. I think that from the feel of it, it sounds closer to Aelid, which make of that what you will.
Because I wouldn't like it was Iliad, it would be a lot more preachy.
Yeah.
And
there'd be a lot more birds going on. You know what I'm saying?
So many feathers. I think that the Bosmer they're really in touch with memory, just overall. So I think they're protecting, not necessarily protecting, overseeing. They're being forced to protect the memory of the Dawn.
Curating, maybe.
Curating, maybe. So the Green Pact is Ifray saying, "Hey, don't forget shit."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And that's why he's the storyteller. He's telling the story of existence
To remind people.
to remind people.
which
I
is
have a very theoretical thing about Yifri that I kind of want to talk about, but
go for it.
Real
Not
quick,
Hircine.
I wanna bring something up in chat where they're suggesting that Aldmeris might be the Ooze. Let me suggest, and so all of Valenwood is a stabilized giant pile of ooze. Let me suggest the following. Has anybody seen, and I don't recommend this, but has anybody seen Evangelion?
Yes.
yeah.
We all remember that red soup that the entire humanity becomes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert for a piece of shit chunk of anime. It is objectively bad, and I will fight anybody in real life who says otherwise. No, I won't. The idea was that it was the fundamental prototype, existence form of all humanity before evolution, and that everybody being reduced to this red goop was a great thing because it was allowing all of mankind to reform and become a single organism. A giant sea of red DNA stuffs.
Mhm.
And I kind of think that might be what the Ooze is.
Yeah. I
Like,
totally agree.
yeah.
it's what the Elnafey were before they were Elnafey.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is almost exactly, maybe not exactly, but that's pretty close to how they're described in the Ooze quest lines.
Mm-hmm.
How they so the oh god, is it Forsaken Oathbreakers? That's what they're called. The
Yes.
Oathbreakers are the ones who go to the Ooze. So they are the original ones. So there's a whole bunch of there who used to be Bosmer and then were Oathbreakers. But the original ones just flat out refused Ifray's gift of form. And side tangent, I kind of think he gave more than just the Bosmer form. But anyway, so I think they were the ones who refused the form, and they talk about how they're like the most natural state of like I don't remember if they actually say Elnofe, but they said like beings on Nirn.
Okay. That sounds a lot like what I was thinking of, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so
I am just confirming your thing.
Clogging up the gears.
I'm reading in chat here.
Greasing the gears. Sims!
Ooh.
Semblio! Also, for that crack about Seal, get the fuck out of my chat, Semblio.
So Johnny Anonymous asked, why is the Ooze only centered on Valenwood and why not all Tamriel? So that makes me wonder, is the Ooze just water as memory? And so to be in hell is to be reduced to just memory?
Well, you're not even a lamp that stays lit at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, could definitely be true.
Because then it's not focused on just Valenwood. It's everywhere, but the Bosmer are the only ones who see it for what it is.
Yeah.
Which is the primordial ooze, right? And so if we look at like Cold Harbor, oh, you just had a revelation. Lay it on us, man. I want to hear this.
I'm thinking.
Go.
It's the proto-ooze that everybody started off as, is the memory from the previous Kalpa.
Ooh.
Yes.
Oh boy.
I dig it.
Yep. And then you go to the notion that, well, real world biological notion that humans are about 2/3 water anyway.
Yeah.
If you assume similar biology with that, they are, then people in Tamriel are mostly memories from somewhere. Most memories from previous Kalpas, from what they've done and all the rest. I've got there's a whole lot of Giles Deleuze that could be pulled out from that, but I don't want to go on a rant about transcendental empiricism at this point in the cast.
Yeah.
We gotta save that for the beginning of the cast, James.
Yeah. We're drive
You don't
drive
just-
off
you don't
viewers
just
that way.
lead
That's how we drive off
easily into
viewers.
that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, watch this space on that because I'm prepping a solo cast where I will wax that's kind of philosophical about the Elder Scrolls at some point soon.
Okay.
I can remember that in the argument that it stated that Nirn was originally just dirt, and
Right.
the water didn't come until everyone started dying.
Watch
Exactly.
this, but
Yeah.
not here.
Get a room.
But yeah, the idea of the ooze being something from the previous Kalpa is kind of although the problem is that how much of the previous Kalpa does everyone remember is then my question. How much of the previous Kalpa is just held in memory as being, and how much of each Kalpa is new? If water is memory is previous Kalpa, then any kind of change is going to be glacial now I think about it. Because so much of it is already memory of stuff that's already happened, and you're having to fight what 2/3 of you or 3/4 of you is.
Yeah, and like you guys
forward.
pointed out, the idea that Tamriel, according to some cultures, was originally nothing but land, and that the water was formed after people came. If we weren't hearing stuff like that, I'd think that this theory was really pretty airtight. Like if we were hearing stuff that you get from other cultures, like real world cultures, where the water was at first the earth was nothing but water, and then the land came from out of it.
Well, what was it we were saying about dirt? The word started as dirt, because I mean, dirt. I feel like we could reinterpret as sand, and what is sand but stone in liquid form?
Right.
You get your waves and dunes, and
I do potentially have a fix for that though. That we get the oceans of Tamriel after the Elnathay Wars.
Yeah.
The point before that, all the memory was held in the Elnathay, who were half Etarda anyway.
And when they died, the water came out.
Yeah.
That's what I've written about that before.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, like, I think it's very specific that the Ionad states out that the world it was interesting to me that the Ionad talks about the world being originally made out of dirt, nothing like this, rocks, no water at all, until the interface started dying, and that's when the first ocean sprang into being. But of all the previous mentions of, they're always stated to be mostly water.
Yeah.
You got the one that Ymeriel comes from, which is stated to be ruled by the Drow Kings. You have the one where before that was talking about there was an endless ocean, and to me that's very specific that the world began, there was no water, but every previous Kappa there is water.
Yeah, that's kind of my pet theory, that this Kalpa is special because from hints that are both in the Anuad and the Red Guard creation myth. Whereas you've got the previous world skins in the previous Kalpas, whereas this Kalpa is stitched together from a load of skins.
Right.
And then you've got the 12 worlds of the Anuad, which happened before, and
Stitched
then
together
this is created from the 12 getting smashed together.
Yeah.
So this Kalpa is special in some way, and that's another way of looking at that.
Especially because everyone seems to be going out of way to make sure it doesn't end.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody seems to be really convinced that this is a good idea. I don't know. Well, I mean, like, it's funny because... no, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop right now. I was about to go off on this whole fucking rant about like the theme of this Kalpa and the fear of death and all this other kind of stuff, and let's just...
I mean, that's pretty much true, though. I mean, yeah, we should probably... That's something preserved for later on, but...
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, the only person that's really trying to go out of their way to destroy this Kalpa is the prisoner. They're literally doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bosmer. Let's see. Why? Okay. Well, I think we've answered a lot of the big questions. Aside from why do Bosmer make the best stealth archers, and why is it useless playing anything else?
You always do a stealth archer.
So why do Bosmer have this fascination with hunting? There seems to be a big...
Well, they invented the bow, didn't they? And
Did they?
And because of...
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep, they invented the bow.
quite how they managed it without using wood.
It's not exactly a mark of genius. Hey, we got a stick and some string. Let's put them together.
Bone, thank you. Bone and some cat gut.
And some
Yes,
Some
cat gut.
Khajiit, Khajiit intestines.
Plug your ears, Michael.
That's actually something to talk about. Yeah, you brought up the fact that you stole that whole idea about giving the Bosmer their shapes from Azura.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But anyway.
I like the fact that Azura just seems to just butter heads everything.
Yeah. Oh, that was another thought I was vaguely wanted to go over, going vaguely into the racial history a bit. The wars with the Khajiit, I cannot remember the name of the stuff that goes on in A Dance in Fire, but those wars seem to be a bit more traditional than the model of Bosmer society as we've been building to this point. We've had the idea of, well, Bosmer only make institutions when they need them, and then they spring to life and serve a purpose or whatever. And each village is its own semi-autonomous state almost, going along with the authority of its spinner. But then you had the war between Elsewhere and Valenwood. If there isn't a nation state of Valenwood to really make that war, is that how did that happen? Or was it literally just the villages along the river?
The Khajiit think that they're better than everyone else, and the Bosmer are protecting against tyrannical invaders.
And whose propaganda have you been smoking?
No, it's because the edge of the green changes where it's at. Trees grow, trees die, so sometimes the green impedes on Elsewhere, and the Khajiit get all upset, and then sometimes Elsewhere impedes on the green, and the Bosmer get all upset.
Yeah,
it impedes on Elsewhere, and then the Khajiit are like, oh, well, we got to clear out all this shit that's like making its way into our land. So then they cut up the green. Bosmer are like, what are you doing? And then
what the fuck?
What?
And then hey, you have the 5 Years' War right there.
I think it was a really good design along this topic. I think it's a really good design to make the zone in ESO of where the border of Elsewhere and Valenwood is. It's the border is the zone. Like almost every other
so
zone.
Ambiguous. You don't really know where.
Yeah, you have no idea when you leave Valenwood and enter Elsewhere. And I think that's a perfect design choice because it shows it. It shows it perfectly.
It almost turns it into like a Israel-Palestine kind of thing. So
that which is a good question. I mean, there's a lot. The nice thing, but the unpleasant thing about the Elder Scrolls Tamriel map is that everybody's partitioned off into their own little sections. But in reality, that's not how things happen at all. And then one of the most realistic things that happens in the Elder Scrolls universe is the taking over of Cyrodiil by the Manish races from the Ayleid, yeah. Because the idea of like the Nords and the Dunmer fighting each other in border disputes doesn't really work. I mean, they invade and occupy, and then they get thrown out, and that's to a degree that's what happened with the Nords. But then when you go to Morrowind, you see very little Nordic architecture all over the place. And that's one of the things that happens when an invading force occupies a land, is that they start building their shit everywhere.
Which makes me wonder if maybe the Dunmer are the primary aggressors, and because they're dicks, they're like
they're such pleasant people.
They're invading us.
I didn't think. Well, just thinking about the Elder Scrolls 3, I don't think the Nords got quite as far as Vardenfell, but
yeah.
I guess. Because Solstheim isn't technically part of Skyrim.
So actually, you bring that up. Is there not Nordic? Aren't there Nordic buildings they're close to the border in ESO? Yeah, I'm pretty sure there were.
There's a town in Morrowind that's got Nordic buildings in it.
Yeah. So
Right.
I can't remember the name of it.
Dagenfell.
Is that it? That might be it. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's way
Yeah.
up to the north in the Shogor.
Yeah, it's right up north. Well, there's a lot of Nords living there, and it uses very, very similar skins to the to Calder and Belgiad and that side of things.
The Dwemer occupied most of the Skyrim current Morrowind border.
the Dwemer, yeah. Well, they went from Morrowind all the way to like what, halfway through Skyrim or so is where Dwemerith was.
Better part of Skyrim. Yeah. I think.
Yeah,
The
like a good chunk of Skyrim.
But I would also suggest that the Dwemer occupied underground.
Sure.
Yeah.
So not necessarily above ground, although they damn well
Oh,
pop their
they still
fucking
got their
towers
like,
out.
towers and
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, their exhaust ports and whatnots. Yeah.
Mm.
All the way to High Rock. There's Dwemer stuff in High Rock. Well, I know there's Dwemer stuff in Hammerfell.
There's Dwemer and Hammerfell. I think
So
they
that's not that
pretty much
crazy.
skipped over everything.
Well,
else.
but yeah, they jumped. They left. That's Clan Rorken. Yeah. Mhm.
Where the hammer fell.
Yeah.
Like one
Well, and then they're up
Hey.
they're up in Roskar too. Which is
Are they?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well,
There's
technically,
there's like Dwemer world bosses in Roskar.
Yeah, there's ruins in Orsinium.
Yeah, man, I've died so many times.
Dwarks confirmed. Amrari, get the fuck out of my chat.
No. Someone slap his wrist.
No.
No, please stay. I'm more than happy to talk about what actually surprisingly great idea dwarks are. Especially after all this time of thinking it was a stupid idea and then suddenly realizing, wait, no, it's actually kind of excellent. I don't know.
It's a little of both.
The real Dreamer were the friends we made along the way. The real Dreamer were the friends we made along the way.
Oh, how nice. That's great. It's secret. It all turned out through friendship.
Do we have any more Bosmer things to talk about?
Let's say no, because we've hit an hour and 15, so we're
thing
good.
I realized.
Oh?
The Wild Hunt.
Oh, yes. Talk about the Wild Hunt, please. Yes. Start us off.
Short version, when Bosmer feel threatened, they turn into goo and murder you and eat everything.
Yeah, they go back to being Chaos Spawn.
Yeah. They become Chaos Spawn again.
Mm-hmm.
And then they eat everything and then eat themselves, and most monsters that people talk about in like campfire to scare you are Wild Hunt monsters, because they'll end up eating each other and then there's only one left, and then it just kind of roams around eating other things.
Mm-hmm.
King Wolf.
Does it not eat itself eventually?
Yes, it does. Once its job has been accomplished.
Sometimes.
Well, I mean, I imagine they kind of devolve into this,
I mean, there are, was it PG-1? I don't remember. Somewhere it talks about how most of the monsters that like are told to children, like the boogeyman that you tell the child to be good and live in the forest, those are all Wild Hunt leftovers.
Okay.
So maybe
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think I agree with Amrari. I seem to recall that the hunt champion who ends up at the end of the Wild Hunt is the only thing that doesn't eat. That it remains, and that's where everything comes from.
Yeah. But I think it's PGE3 because that's the only one that I've read like in its entirety. That it says that a majority of the hunt, so the big mass of just constantly shifting monsters, they basically turn on each other when they don't have a target anymore. Kind of like a frenzied berserker a little bit,
Yes, and you actually see that in the Dance of Fire or whatever the hell it's called. I can't remember what the book is called.
Yeah, they explode outward to expel the invaders, then collapse inward in a cannibalistic orgy until only the champion remains.
Yeah, a dance in fire. Yeah.
Oh, I've just seen another point on the Wild Hunt which we can misinterpret to our heart's content here. Thinking about the connection between the Bosmer and Hircine, the ritual of the innocent quarry is also called the Wild Hunt.
Yes.
That Hircine's ritual hunt this thing with hordes of Daedra is also the Wild Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any connection there beyond the name?
I think that Hircine really, really wants the Bosmer. They're the best little mortal things that Tamriel produced that fit into his sphere. So he wants them a lot. So he's like, hey, you've got this thing called the Wild Hunt. I've got this thing called the Wild Hunt. We're basically the same dudes.
Come on over.
Come on over.
Well, I'm wondering if Hircine and Ifray are two sides of the same coin. Right?
They are a
they're
little
one
bit.
being, and that their wild hunts are actually the same thing, seen from different perspectives and explained away in different ways.
I'm gonna throw you a little wrench in that.
Do it.
More like, okay. Think of all the nature gods. You got Kine, you got Y'ffre, you got Hircine, you got Jeffrey, and you got Periite. I was saying that Y'ffre seems to be more of a mixture of all of them.
Okay.
So what you're saying is that Ifray is the oversoul, and that these others are its requisite parts.
Not necessarily oversoul, because I was trying to mention this earlier. Okay, because something I always thought was interesting about the Bosmer and about the whole idea behind Y'ffre is the fact that Y'ffre gave them their shapes to balance out their role between being chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives me a very strong natural order vibe of Periite. And if you look at Periite shrines throughout the games, guess where they're always at? They're either around nature or they're literally trees.
Oh.
Now think about the whole ooze thing, about how Periite has literally been described as ooze by his followers, and you get a very kind of interesting implication behind that. And then you have the whole thing with Hircine and his with the lycanthropy, and you have transformations and everything. Then you also have the connotations with Kine, and that's where you start seeing how things can get a lot more complicated.
So, I mean, most Aedra have some sort of relation with a Daedra, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's the stereotypical Meridia Kinnereth bit. I'm following what you're saying. I think it's probably true at very least with Y'ffre and Hircine. But I think it is also important to note Y'ffre is an oversoul. She shattered into itty bitty bits and became Earthbones.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, were there like larger bits of him that did other things? I don't know. Maybe.
Possible. But at the same time, I don't know. Periite's very fucking weird. He's like a piece of everybody.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe that's kind of the whole point of him.
Yeah, he's literally a piece of everyone.
Yeah, he is. How can you be the Lord of Balance if you don't actually have a little bit of everything in you? Phrasing.
Easy, boys.
Is that from personal experience, John?
Hey yo.
Yeah.
All right. So, did we cover everything? Somebody somebody wanted us to talk about the Wilderking.
Oh
Yeah.
I love that guy.
Sort of the spirit of Valenwood. Also interesting, the Wilderking Queen can manipulate the earth, the Nirn, and change its shape and change its form, almost like it's a part of the Ooze. Wink, wink.
Isn't it also like an incarnation as well?
But with like a bitchin' mask.
So bitchin' mask.
I want that mask so bad. When do we get that mask?
So
Yeah.
where the Sylvanar and Green Lady are sort of the manifestation of the Bosmer, the Wilderking is the manifestation of the land they live in.
It's
I can see
very.
that.
It's almost really like a Native American kind of thing. Like those are the vibes I get from it. Almost like animus. He's the collective spirit of you know the land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's
Gaia.
spirit of the land. Kind of. More like I can't really think of anything that relates to it actually. It's like the land gives birth to itself.
Well,
Sort of like an avatar of Nirn.
Okay.
I can see that.
Like
This is
I'm
Mhm.
talking like Forgotten Realms type avatar, not like
Okay. You're talking personification,
yes, personification.
not
yeah.
Nirnerine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like the more Hindi version of the word.
But isn't the Witter
Right.
King and the Witter Queen basically incarnated and they're chosen?
If I'd have to play that, it's been since
It's
2014 since I played West,
so the new Wilder Queen was born that way.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, because she was literally born with the powers to pretty much warp the earth around her.
Yeah, and it's
no one described that.
also not just Valenwood.
Well, and
Because the Altmer snatch her up and have her like literally create an island out near Somerset and fuck with it.
So an interesting observation I kind of want to point out. Moharam said the Wilderking has been seen to summon lands from underwater and water as memory. That makes me wonder: does the Wilderking, Queen, whatever, have the ability to remind the Godhead of things that it has forgotten, to dry off the drowned lamps, as it were?
Turns out the Witter King could raise Yehuda all along.
Yeah, they just need to kind of ship him out there, and then
I know some Redguard are going to be
he can get all
pissed.
Yoda on it, and
Hey, Redguard, I got a present for you. Yeah.
All those Ansei are just like, wow, is my face red? Woo.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
don't know whether
orcs. Sorry.
we could call that to be transcalpic or anything. I don't know whether, because it could just be as simple as manipulating the earth. Never mind manipulating water. It depends on what the extent of their creative ability is. If they're creating stuff whole cloth, as in fresh green surface plants suddenly springs to life when they can summon it out of the water, then yeah, something funky is going on. But if it's literally just moving stuff around, then maybe a bit less magical.
I need to get a camera so you can see me kind of like light bulbing here. The Bosmer spinners tell a story to manipulate and change the story of people and individuals and the Bosmer people. The Wilder King changes the story of Nirn itself.
Right. I think what we're kind of getting at from a developer, from as usual, I'm starting to think think about things from the author's point of view, is that we're kind of just watching writers play on the theme of storytelling with with the Bosmer, and just kind of fool around with the idea of, well, this is storytelling, but when you tell the story, it becomes real, and then just that on different scales, basically.
Well, what that reminds me of, and I mean, this is a bit of a departure, really, but it reminds me of, did anyone do the Prognosticator quest in Clockwork City?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Prognosticator looks at someone and makes a calculation based on the data it has, the memory it has, to discern that individual's fate. So I wonder how that relates to singing.
So that's related more That's related more to the wave function of a quantum particle.
So more observer stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
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 So it's the oh my god, my brain is not functioning today. I'm so sorry. The idea that in the quantum world everything can be traced back both forward and backwards in time, given that you have all data points of the wave function. So I think that's where more Set is doing his thing. I wrote a thing on this. Didn't you read this thing?
No, I didn't read your thing.
Not you, Andrew. You don't read anything.
I don't.
Yes.
I'm so fucking terrible.
I believe I did. I mean, I don't think I connected it to the prognosticator.
I think that's where Set comes in. Anyway, yeah, go.
Can I just make a quick connection with or contrast here with this with the spinners and so on? Just go on a complete tangent again. The spinners are quite opposite in the I kind of see that their way of they're telling dynamic stories and using stories for change feels like the opposite of what Nord Skalds do. It's retelling. Nord Skalds are telling the past so that they can remember how things were and how everyone was heroic and wonderful. And yes, isn't the past wonderful? And oh no, we miss Atmora. But the spinners take things and make them dynamic, keep them changing. There was a fantastic post that Mojo started. I want to say about 2015, may have been slightly earlier. I was about spitballing ideas for what Atmora could be, and I think it was Samfire that posited this idea that as the Nords keep on telling the same story about the return and all these glorious stuff over and over and over, Atmora freezes a little bit more because the story form is set. Whereas the spinners are keeping Valenwood fluid by changing stuff. They tell stories and the narrative that they're telling keeps on changing, which is kind of why it's a bit weird for the the creation myths are varying. That you have the Ooze, and then you also have they're just high elves that wanted to get back to nature sort of thing. Both of those are steadily becoming true within the Bosmer cultural narrative because the spinners are telling things and it's changing things. I'm not sure. I really, really, really don't want to use the word methopoesis here because it gets overused and it's horrible.
I heard it coming too.
Yeah, but it was coming.
I really didn't want it. I really didn't want it to, but it also kind of relates. Is that the Bosmer form of tonal architecture then? If we have Dwemer with tonal architecture and Red Guards with sword singing and so on and so forth.
Well, 100%.
Nords with shouting and yeah.
Yeah, I've actually been championing that idea since ESO even came out.
Okay. I don't read anything either, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just thought I had an original thought there. No, you've just shut me down.
There are no new ideas, dude.
No, you did have an original thought. You thought of it all by yourself without any influence. It is your original thought. It's just other people got there also.
Yep. Well, I've been there.
Parallel original thoughts.
There you go.
Good.
It's better than serial original thoughts.
It doesn't only go one way, but
all right.
What we need is a Crystal Tower original thought that's present in everyone's heads at once.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it is. It's called I Am.
No.
So okay, we really need to call it because we're at an hour and a half. We're like a half an hour over what we're usually supposed to do. Like we always go a half an hour over.
I just stopped calling them an hour long and just call them an hour and a half.
I know. Why are we lying to ourselves?
Just inflate it.
Yeah.
If we start doing that, it's gonna be 2 hours long.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for watching. If you're new to the Lorecast, make sure to throw a follow so you get an alert on when we're going live. Also, make sure to join the Discord channel. There's a link in the channel's description. The Discord is probably the best way to find out when we go live because Twitch is lazy and doesn't want to tell people. We're going to be back in 2 weeks, hopefully. with a cast on. You guys want to do orcs next?
Sure. If-
Awesome.
If we can get Cody in here, absolutely.
Yes, if we can get Cody, we'll definitely do orcs. We'll make a concerted effort to try to get Cody in here. And he won't want to miss it. So in the meantime, thanks to everybody who followed, all of our new followers, and yeah, goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh Lord, press the button. There it is.